A man wanted for killing a young mother on Mother's Day is behind bars tonight. Police say DeAndre Miller shot and killed Jorre Hadley in front of her 3-year-old son and her siblings. The gunfire broke out during a custody exchange. Miller was arrested yesterday at a home less than 2 miles from where the shooting took place. He is now charged with first-degree murder and several other counts.
May 11th, 2025, Mother's Day, North St. Louis. On a narrow stretch of Lexington Avenue in the Ville, a neighborhood rich with history, resilience, and stories that never make the news, something that would split a family in half and leave a community searching for answers. At exactly 7:30 p.m., a dark-colored sedan drifted slowly toward the curb. No screeching brakes, no engine revving, just this eerie, unnatural roll, like the car itself already knew something was wrong. Gunshots, not loud, not exaggerated, just sharp, chilling bursts, multiple rounds fired, glass shattered, and then a baby's cry. When the first officers arrived, they approached the vehicle with caution, flashlights out, hands hovering near their holsters. And there in the driver's seat, they found a 24-year-old mother. She was slumped forward, motionless, her hand still resting on the steering wheel, her breathing shallow, slipping, fighting for life, but losing ground fast. In the back seat, her baby, wide-eyed, confused, untouched physically but emotionally, forever marked by what had just happened in the front seat. And here's the thing, at that moment, no one realized just how deep the roots of this tragedy went. No one could see the months, maybe even years of tension, loyalty, fear, heartbreak, manipulation, and love twisted into something unrecognizable, something deadly. Was this a random act? A targeted hit? A domestic situation gone too far? The street whispers one thing, but the truth is far more complicated. Welcome back to Crime Journal TV, the place where we shine a light on the darkest stories hiding in plain sight, where we peel back the layers, uncover the motives, expose the lies, and most importantly, honor the victims whose voices can no longer speak for themselves. And listen, before we go any deeper, do me one favor. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Join the family, because the stories we uncover here, the twists, the betrayals, the revelations, you will not want to miss any of them. Now, let's step back into her world. Let's rewind the clock. Let's begin with the young woman who didn't make it home that Mother's Day evening, and the chain of events that led her there. Her name was Jorre Hadley, 24 years old, a young mother, a big sister, a protector, and the kind of woman whose presence could quiet a room or hold a family together when everything else was falling apart. Jorre wasn't just the oldest of 8 children. She was their foundation, their safe place, their steady voice, their second mother, long before she ever had a child of her own. When their mother passed away in 2021, the world should have paused for her, even just for a moment. But life didn't. Bills didn't. School didn't. Responsibilities didn't. So Jorre did what strong daughters do. She stepped up. She became the cook, the driver, the problem solver, the late-night listener, the morning alarm clock, the one who held the younger ones when the house felt too quiet without their mom. And through all of that, through grief, stress, responsibilities far beyond her age, she still kept pushing forward. She went to college, not just to go, but to finish, to build something better, to create the life she wished she had growing up. She earned her degree in child and family development, a field that made sense for her because helping others was natural to her. She was gentle, patient, and wise beyond her years. Her faith kept her steady. She attended the unfailing Love Christian Church, a place where she feels connected spiritually. Her son kept her moving, and her dreams kept her believing. She talked about moving to Texas, a fresh start, a new chapter, a place where the sun felt warmer and life felt lighter. She wanted a home with space for her son to run in the yard, a job that valued her, a life that finally matched the weight she carried. But even in the brightest stories, there are shadows. And Jorre, for all the light she poured into others, had burdens she didn't always voice, worries she kept to herself, and relationships that were more complicated than they appeared. Because here's the truth nobody likes to talk about. Sometimes the strongest people, the most responsible ones, the ones who show up for everybody else, are the ones carrying pain quietly. Jorre was kind, but kindness isn't protection. She was loyal, but loyalty can be abused. She loved deeply, but deep love can blind you to danger. And sometimes the person you trust, the person you forgive, the person you think would never hurt you, is exactly the one you should have been afraid of. In Jorre's story, that truth would come too late. In every tragedy, there's a shadow. And in Jorre's story, that shadow came to form a man who once stood close to her, close enough to earn her trust, close enough to know her routines, close enough to understand her heart, and close enough to break it. His name was DeAndre Miller. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't some random face from the street. He was someone familiar, someone who had been part of her world long enough to blend in, someone who knew her strengths and her vulnerabilities. To understand this case, you have to understand him, where he came from, what drove him, and the darkness that lived quietly behind his charm. He grew up with his own set of battles, anger issues, trust problems, a temper that didn't always need a reason. To friends, he could be funny, laid back, even helpful. But to the people closest to him, he was unpredictable, sensitive to control, quick to feel disrespected, quick to assume betrayal. And while Jorre was building a future, he was sinking into insecurities he refused to confront. A missed call at 2 a.m., a text bubble saying, "Where you at?" A face in a car mirror, watching. He wasn't her boyfriend. Not anymore. Maybe not ever in the way he wanted. But in his mind, Jorre's life was still tied to his. Her decisions still affected him. Her freedom felt like a threat. That's how control works. It doesn't always show up as screaming or hitting. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, a tone in a text, a comment meant as a joke, a pullback when she tries to leave, a sudden interest in where she goes and who she's with. On the outside, he looked like any other young man trying to figure out life. But behind closed doors, there were arguments, disagreements that escalated fast. Moments that made Jorre uncomfortable, moments she brushed off because she wanted to avoid conflict. And maybe she thought he'd grow out of it. Maybe she thought he'd change. Maybe she hoped time would soften him. But jealousy doesn't soften. Control doesn't shrink. And resentment grows quietly until it becomes something dangerous. There were red flags, whispers from friends, small warnings, subtle distancing. Things she saw, things she felt, things she tried to ignore. He followed her Instagram stories a little too closely. He noticed every new follower, every like, every post where she looked happy without him. That bothered him. A message saying, "You moving weird." A message saying, "I see everything." A message unsent. He wasn't just watching her life. He was measuring it against his own fears. And fear mixed with jealousy? That's a dangerous combination. He had moments of silence, disappearing for days, then reappearing with questions that sounded innocent but carried weight. He asked about her friends, her plans, her family, her son. And here's what investigators would later uncover. In the weeks leading up to Mother's Day, he wasn't just watching from a distance. He was getting closer, more observant, more tense, more convinced that Jorre was moving on without him. He saw her future, and somewhere deep inside, he felt he wasn't a part of it anymore. That idea, that loss of control, lit fire inside him he didn't know how to manage. And instead of stepping back, instead of healing, instead of letting her live her life, he chose a darker path, a path that began with jealousy and ended with violence. By the time Mother's Day arrived, the signs were already there. The warning shots weren't bullets. They were behaviors, patterns, moments everyone overlooked. And the worst part? If someone had paid closer attention, if someone had connected the dots, maybe the tragedy that unfolded that night could have been stopped. But it wasn't, and everything was about to change. Mother's Day, May 11th, 2025. A day meant for flowers, dinner plans, long hugs, and whispered thank yous. But for Jorre, it would become the last day she ever breathed. She spent the morning doing what she always did, caring for others, checking on her siblings, making sure her son was fed, dressed, smiling. Even while carrying her own weight, she found room to carry everyone else's. As the sun set, she got into her car, her baby in the back seat, and headed out for a short trip. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual, just a simple drive on a quiet Sunday evening. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that someone else had been watching her movements that day. Investigators later discovered that the suspect, the same man who had been spiraling in his jealousy, had spent the day stewing in silence, scrolling through her posts, checking her activity, watching her life unfold without him. And somewhere between afternoon and evening, something in him snapped. He left wherever he was, got into his car, and started driving. A map graphic slowly zooms toward the Ville neighborhood. He knew her route. He knew the places she liked to stop. And he knew exactly where he'd find her. At around 7:20 p.m., residents on Lexington Avenue noticed a car circling the block. Not fast, not reckless, just slow, like someone looking for something or someone. A dog barks in the background. A door closes. Evening calm. A few minutes later, Jorre's vehicle appeared. She pulled forward to park near a home she often visited, her baby babbling in the back seat. No fear, no suspicion, just a regular moment, seconds away from disaster. And then everything happened at once. A neighbor reported hearing what they thought was a firecracker, then another, until the truth became impossible to ignore. The suspect walked up to her car window. No argument, no screaming, no warning, just pure, calculated violence. He fired multiple shots, not one or two, up to 18 times to the driver's side window, shattering glass, tearing through metal, and hitting Jorre as she sat buckled into her seat. Her baby, strapped into his car seat behind her, burst into tears. And that tiny cry, that helpless, terrified cry, was the only sound left on the street as the suspect backed away and ran. Jorre's car rolled forward, slow, almost gentle, until it tapped the curb and stopped. And for a moment, the world stayed still. People rushed outside. Some shouted for help. Others froze in shock. One woman tried to open the door, but stepped back when she saw the blood. Within minutes, officers arrived. They approached carefully, the baby still crying, the engine still running, the glass still settling. Inside, they found Jorre, barely conscious, her breathing shallow, her body limp. Even then, even in those final seconds, she had her hand on the steering wheel, like she was still trying to control the car, still trying to protect her child, still trying to live. Paramedics worked quickly, stabilizing the baby first, then pulling Jorre from the vehicle. They tried, they worked, they fought for her. But the injuries were too severe. By the time she reached the hospital, Jorre Hadley, at just 24 years old, was gone. And in the moments after her death, when the shock hadn't even settled, the questions began. Who would do this? Why? How'd he find her? What pushed him over the edge? And why do so many stories like hers end this way? The answers were coming, piece by piece, lie by lie, from the investigation that followed.
All night I couldn't even sleep.
Because when the call came, it was truly hard to grasp.
And I was like,
please let this not be true.
24-year-old Jorre Hadley had just attended a special red carpet Mother's Day here at her new church. Following the service, brunch and family photos.
I was telling her Happy Mother's Day. I was glad she was here, and she was like, Happy Mother's Day to you.
Pastor Jason Barney and his wife say Hadley was full of joy and was enthusiastic about life, despite experiencing grief.
Earlier in the service, we had did a memorial service for people whose mothers had been deceased, and she came up and she was visibly upset at that time, and she was heavily crying. But as the service went on, she was joyful. Her son was interacting with other kids that was in the service.
Later that night, just before 8 p.m., police would find her shot to death inside of her car, just down the road from the church, here on the 4200 block of Moffett Avenue. A man in the area says he heard 10 to 15 gunshots.
Just rapid shooting, not machine gun shots, just kind of rapid shooting. That's it. I ain't heard no car squealing or nothing like that. But something that need to be, addressed as soon as we can. But it's starting to be all too common.
As police investigate the circumstances, the young mother's newfound church family is trying to connect with her biological family, who they say they haven't been able to reach.
Because I wanted to see if we can connect with the family, how we can support them and walk alongside them during this time, how we can support her son, anything we can do.
If you know anything about this crime, who pulled the trigger or why, the number to call is on your screen, 866-371-TIPS.
Just arrived on scene, they found a female who had been shot multiple times inside of a car. Firefighters and paramedics responded. They did everything they could, but unfortunately, this woman lost her life last night.
Jorre was a devoted mom to her 3-year-old son, Nasir. At the time of the shooting, Janiyah said that her little sister and nephew were inside the car with Jorre. Her brother was right behind them in a separate car. He had been getting a tire fix nearby.
She wasn't even supposed to be in St. Louis. She was supposed to be in Texas, finished getting her degree for college. She was just a good person. She ain't deserved it.
As the oldest of 8 siblings, Jorre had returned home to help raise her brothers and sisters. Their mother passed away from a heart attack in January 2021. Janiyah says they were planning a summer trip to Chicago for Jorre's 25th birthday.
And then my little brother called me, and my little brother was screaming on the phone. And my little brother was like, she was dead. And then when I had pulled up, it was just a crime scene. My little brother and them was crying. My nephew and my sister was, they was in the back of the police car. They wouldn't let me see them. I ain't gonna lie, I passed out a couple times.
Janiyah was home cooking dinner, expecting Jorre and her siblings to celebrate their mother's birthday. Instead, she was met with sirens, yellow tape, and heartbreak.
Neighbors ran outside. Someone screamed. Someone called 911. Someone held their head in their hands, saying, "Not again, not again, not on Mother's Day." As Jorre's car rolled forward, barely moving, her baby cried from the back seat, confused, frightened, and staring at the only world he had ever known slipping away. This was the moment everything changed, and while the world would see headlines, mother killed, baby found unharmed, suspect on the run. We're not here for the headlines. We're here for the truth, the chain of events, the emotional cracks, the warnings missed, the people who knew something was wrong long before the first bullet ever left the gun. Because what happened on that street? It didn't start with a gun. It started with control, with jealousy, with silence, with all the small moments no one ever thinks will lead to tragedy. And now, with the world watching, the question is, who pulled the trigger? And what happened in the final moments between Jorre and the man she once trusted? The community mourned. The church cried. Her siblings collapsed into each other. Her baby boy left with silence where his mother should have been. In the days after the shooting, the Ville neighborhood looked different. Front porches weren't as loud. Neighbors didn't linger outside. Even the streets seemed to exhale slower, like the entire community was holding its breath. At the memorial service, the church was full. People stood in the back. Some sat in the aisles. Some couldn't sit at all. They just held their hands over their mouths, shaking their heads, unable to believe they were here again. Pictures of Jorre lined the altar. Her smile, wide, bright, full of life. Her son, in tiny shoes and a tiny suit, held by relatives who were trying desperately to be strong for him. But how do you explain to a baby that the arms he's reaching for will never reach back? And then the legal storm began. Police statements, witness interviews, phone records, security cameras from nearby streets. Every detail picked apart under fluorescent lights. On the other side of the room sat the man the police believed was responsible. Expression blank, hands resting on the table. Not a single sign of the chaos he created. Jorre's family showed up to every hearing, every court date, every update, no matter how small, because for them, this wasn't just a case. This was their daughter, their sister, their friend, their everything. Some days, the courtroom was quiet. Other days, tensions rose. Voices cracked. Lawyers argued. And the weight of the truth felt so heavy, it seemed to press down on every seat, every wall, every breath. The prosecution laid out a timeline. The calls, the messages, the threats, the final meeting. The defense tried to rewrite it, tried to soften it, tried to reshape decisions that could never be undone. But no argument, no strategy, no legal playbook in the world could erase the fact that a young mother was ambushed on Mother's Day. In the community, her story spread, not as gossip, not as rumor, but as a warning. A message about relationships that turned dark, about control disguised as love, about danger hiding behind familiar faces. Mothers held their daughters a little closer. Friends checked in on each other more. Pastors preached about protection and purpose. Neighbors lit candles on their steps. They said her name out loud. They kept her memory present, because forgetting her felt like losing her twice. And while the legal battles continue, hearings, motions, delays, none of it can change what happened on that quiet street. No verdict will bring her back. No sentence will erase the trauma etched into her child's future. No courtroom victory will heal the empty space she left behind. Because the heart of this story isn't about the killer. It's about the life he stole. A life filled with promise. A life built on love. A life that should have been celebrated, not taken. And as a community waits for justice, they hold on to her memory. They hold on to each other. And they hold on to the belief that her story must never be forgotten. When a story like this ends, it doesn't really end. The courtroom closes. The headlines fade. People go back to their routines. But the ones who loved her, they carry the weight forever. Her son will grow up hearing stories about the mother he lost. Stories of her kindness, her laughter, her light. Stories of how she protected everyone, except the dangers she didn't see coming. And for her siblings, life now is a before and an after. Before the call, before the police lights. Before Mother's Day turned into a memory they can barely hold without breaking. This case isn't just about violence. It's about the silent struggles people hide, the fear they downplay, the control they excuse, the danger they learn to live with until it's too late. So, let this be a reminder. If you or someone you know is trapped in a relationship filled with fear, manipulation, threats, or control, please reach out. Tell someone. Get help, because love should never feel like walking on broken glass. We honor Jorre's life today, her dreams, her courage, her heart, and we speak her name not because of how her life ended, but because of how beautifully she lived it. Because these stories matter, because their names deserve to be remembered, and because every life taken leaves ripples. Families shattered, children orphaned, communities forever changed. Thank you for watching this episode of Crime Journal TV. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you never miss the stories we bring to light. Stories that deserve to be told, no matter how dark, no matter how painful. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and take care of the people you love. This is Crime Journal TV, and we'll see you in the next one.